Okay, so thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. I'm sure that some of you are being pulled in multiple directions with regards to the recent events and the period of mourning that's been announced. So we do expect our live attendance will potentially be reduced this morning, but we have decided to go ahead with this because lots of people had already rescheduled things to be able to attend, and we are recording so that we can share with anybody who's been pulled off to go elsewhere. So thank you to everyone, and this is our first of hopefully a termly panel meeting on different themes, I hasten to add, where we let representatives from leading industry companies talk about the things that matter to SENCOs. I'm Abigail.
And I'm Gavin.
There you go. And we look after about 10,000 SENCOs and SEN professionals within Sensible SENCO, which is ACIC. If you haven't already joined us, there should be some QR links which we will send out a little later.
Okay, today we're here to talk about the assistive technology in the classroom and answer any questions that were posted on our Facebook group. We're going to keep it light and hopefully entertaining and informative as possible. And we're going to remind all the guests that while we understand there is competitiveness between you, no fisticuffs or virtual fisticuffs. Okay? Yeah, I can see. Yeah, that's it. You, Luke. Yeah. And Arran. Yeah.
I'm going to use teacher voice if necessary. The chat is open, and if we have any time, we will answer extra questions at the end, but we do have a lot of speakers and quite a few questions to get through. So if we don't get to any of your questions, we will put them out to the panel and we'll post any replies onto the website. We'll make sure that you do get the answers. We've also opened a form which we'll drop into the chat a little bit later. So if you want us to pass your details on to any of the panel members about a chat, a further chat about what's available and what they have to offer, we can pass those details over to them. We'd better introduce our guests, I suppose. So we're giving each one of them 1 minute to tell us who they are, what they're representing, what their product is. 1 minute. We'll go in, well, I'll shout a name out and they can unmute themselves and do that. So Arran, would you like to go first?
As I'm dyslexic, can I claim my 25% extra time?
No.
I am as well.
Sorry, I had to get that one in. I'm Arran Smith. I'm the UK's dyslexia and SEN consultant for Microsoft and a dyslexic entrepreneur.
That was 75% of the time reduced. Well done, thank you, Arran. Luke.
I'm Luke. I work at International Dyslexia Learning Solutions, or IDL for short. I'm part of the team that develops intervention digital tools for dyslexia, dyscalculia, as well as a series of screeners.
Thank you very much, Luke. Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm Senior Education Consultant at Cricksoft. We're the makers of the award-winning software Clicker, designed for primary children, and more recently Docs Plus, designed for secondary age learners.
Do you know, anybody think they've prepared these scripts?
Yeah. What, like us?
Like us. Jim, you're next.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm also dyslexic as well. I work for Scanning Pens and I look after the secondary market.
You, Jim. And last but not least, Patrick.
I think I can claim the 2 minutes of extra time that everybody else didn't take. Hi, I'm Patrick. Many of you will call me Paddy in the industry as well, I should say. Head of Education Strategy at the TextHelp Group. Focused really on leading our EMEA team there to make sure that our products in TextHelp have a real and meaningful impact. Inclusion, equity, accessibility, that's our words. Most people would know us for some core products like Read and Write, Literacy Support Toolbar used in exams, Claro software is part of the family there too, and also maths tools for accessibility like Equatio and Orbit Note on PDF. So a whole big rich range of tools there, and wonderful to be here, and thanks for the invite, Abigail and Gavin.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Paddy. I'll get it right by the end. And if anybody notices Paddy drinking, apparently it's not a Guinness in a very small glass. It is espresso he's drinking.
Yeah. It's Guinness.
It's Guinness.
So yeah. Thank you all for being here, and let's get straight into the questions. These will be rapid fire questions, and each representative will be given 2 minutes to answer as a maximum to answer each of the questions that they have selected.
Yeah, Arran.
Yeah, got our
I'll
eyes
have a
on
go.
you. If our guests want to add something to the other speakers' points, just raise your hand, okay? So we've got the raise hand buttons. Yeah,
Wave.
we just
Or
or
just
wave.
wave.
Just wave. It's probably easier than finding the button on this Microsoft system. Okay. The first question. Aaron's like. Okay. The first question came from a SENCO in a London school that we were reviewing at the time. We were in a discussion with peers in the classrooms that was promoted, creating a noisy but productive workspace. So the question is.
Oh, okay, I get questions. Okay. Just make that clear. So a London school we were reviewing, they had a discussion with the peers in the classroom that was being promoted, but it was a really noisy environment, although it was productive. How can we facilitate assistive technology, which is speech to text or reading, within a classroom? So how can we do that when it is quite noisy in a classroom? Arran actually has volunteered to give us his 2 penneth worth on this one. Off you go, Arran.
The thing about what it is it's quite logical. Let's just use a set of headphones. It's like a set of headphones is like a simple thing. I'm going to use another product like I'm going to use Jim's product, because whenever I've talked about scanning pens, you use you put one ear in, because it comes with a set of headphones, and it's the same with any of our products. If you're doing text to speech, let's use it. Just have one ear. It's the simple thing to manage it, and I think that any assistive tech in the classroom, managing it is it's actually a positive thing, because you can use different things, and it doesn't matter if we're using TextHelp, ClickR, IDL, or Microsoft products. They all work really well, and it's the same concept, because it's a universal thing. It's like we do it at work, so why can't we do it in the classroom?
I think the question also came about. Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt with that bit there. That it was about the speaking within it as well. So having something that was speech to text within the classroom.
So speech tech is always going to be difficult, because depending on what you're doing and depends on which product you're using. So if we take Microsoft as a prime example, Microsoft's tech dictation product needs to be online. It uses cloud technology like your smart speaker. So that means then it's going to need a little bit of quietness. But again, directional microphone is the logical thing to do. There is no barrier to it. I used to use IBM Speak, which never worked, and I had to sit at the back of the classroom, and the classroom will always be really quiet because it wouldn't work. But nowadays we use speech to text on a lot of devices, and it's getting better every day. That's the thing.
Brilliant, thank you, Arran. Jim, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, of course. So we're going off question 1, aren't we? How to facilitate assistive tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's already taken a little bit from what the pens actually do, but just to add to kind of what he said.
I think Jim is experiencing some internet issues because he got cut off a moment ago as well. So we will.
Let's come back. Let's let him back. He's going to have more than his 2 minutes, isn't he?
This is his trick.
He's gaining more time.
I keep cutting out, and I don't know why. It keeps cutting me off. Right, sorry guys.
Okay.
The part as well that Arran was suggesting is not just how do we facilitate, is making it actually part of a toolkit as well. All teachers should have access to any assistive tech that's available to them, such as like Paddy with Read and Write. And the great thing about our devices is that it's kind of integral with that, because you can actually plug in our devices into the computer, you can scan the text in, and you can start to use other programs. So it starts to become an all-inclusive approach for everybody. It's also, there's variety of strategies that you can use within the classroom, and not just targeting specific children, which kind of takes away from that stigma that they look different. And this is a lot of the conversations that I have with schools, is that, you know, we want to create it so that anybody can use these devices. And it's important that we create this environment for the children, basically, because being a dyslexic myself as well, I was in that classroom. I was that person who was asked to read out loud in the classroom, and I absolutely hated it. I was that person who would want to get kicked out of the classroom very quickly. So it's all about creating that environment that everybody feels welcome, and how we facilitate that technology is make it inclusive, that anybody can use it no matter what. So that's how I feel we can really facilitate the technology.
Make it inclusive, make it the norm. Yeah, brilliant.
Exactly.
Paddy, do you want to add to that for us?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for letting me go last after two industry luminaries of Arran and Jim there. It's like, can I just go what they said and that would be fine? But I would pick up on a couple of things, and they're almost nuanced things. And Arran talked earlier about headsets, and one of the things we've noticed is to actually encourage pupils to use their own headsets and headphones, and that, you know, everybody's walking around with a phone of some shape, manner, or form, but many of our children are listening to music or whatever they're into. And I think that's important because it comes back to Jim's point, that removal of stigma of the heavy set headset. It's there, and it does make a difference. But if you're there in your little pair of white earbuds with your microphone there, you can still use text to speech, you can still use speech to text, and that works really well. You know, but I also think that there's two things really as extensions, I suppose, on the back of what Jim said. That toolkit piece is really important. That giving students and pupils the opportunity to use what suits them without that stigma. If everybody has it in a classroom, then everybody, you know, has the ability to use it. But I think what we forget about sometimes, certainly from industry, is the challenge that when you're in a classroom of actually presenting the opportunity to the pupil to use it. And that I always go, when I'm doing presentations, I always go, look, there's one piece of advice. People go, oh, it's one piece of advice, Paddy. Opportunity is always my piece of advice. Pick up your inbuilt tools, use your read and write toolbar, use your scanning pen, give the opportunity and present it there within the classroom, encourage pupils to use it. And if I could just mention one last thing, and it really comes back to speech to text more than text to speech, maybe on some occasions. But you know, we have this term in customer success, and many of us will use it. We call it onboarding, right? You know, making sure kids get started with tech. But the important thing there is that element of training. You know, we talk about things that you wouldn't expect, like speech to text, and we encourage pupils to speak like a robot because that's language that they actually understand. And actually, all we're asking them is to speak, you know, at a reasonable pace when they're speaking into that engine. You know, we're reminding them of pronunciation rules. You know, you can say full stop and it will put a full stop in. You can capitalize. You can open a bracket. And I think that opportunity thing will only ever present itself if we really take the time out to help our pupils understand how a pen can help, how the inbuilt tool can help, how a literacy toolbar or a maths toolbar can actually help them, and give them the opportunity to use it. So I think there's a lot to unpick in that question, and hopefully we'll come to that stuff as we go through the rest.
Arran, you've got about 10 seconds.
That's why I'm going to add one thing. I think that we've all said the same thing, that is that headphones should not be a barrier, and I really like the idea of using your own headphone. And I think that actually the one thing that teachers need to think is actually it's not a barrier to learning. It's actually a positivity for learning, and remove that stigma. It is when I go into schools and I see these things, no headphones, no phones. It's like I say, well, here's the Equality Act, because if I don't have my phone, I'm not accessible. I'm not inclusive. You've been muted, but for some reason.
Abigail,
somebody muted us.
Abigail muted me.
I can't mute you. I don't have the rights.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, he was muting himself whilst texting somebody. Mobile phones, you kind of segued into our next section for us. They are a part of our day-to-day lives. I imagine most of us have got our mobile phone relatively close to us. And a huge amount of time is spent on them for the average person. Apparently, we look at it between 96 and 150 times a day. I'm sure teenagers could probably double or even triple that. With that, we're seeing more and more schools saying you can't have your mobile phone. I know one school where they have to hand it in every morning. It gets put in a plastic wallet. Our own son's school, it must be buried in the bottom of their bag, and if it sees the light of day, it will disintegrate. Lots of us, you know, experiencing that with schools looking to turn off those distractions. How much is this going to impair the access to assistive technology which we use to support students. And I'm going to go to Luke first for this one.
I'm going to say I'm glad you dodged the bullet on the last one, because there wasn't much in the way of unploughed earth left, other than what everybody else said. So yeah, actually interesting you should mention the pockets. I saw an article some time ago that kind of crystallized this for me. I can't remember what the product was called, Yonder or something similar. But it's a nifty bit of kit that you put your phone in, it automatically locks, and then you need to boop it on a magnet to unlock it at the end of the day. Very reminiscent for those of us that have worked in retail. But I think that the whole focus of keeping phones away from children at that age is just wrong. It's a cultural thing, like we've already touched on before, with regards of we should be looking at ways to productively and holistically integrate these schools with phones. The technology's there. We should be making best use of it. It's not a case of rejecting distraction. It's a case of embracing the benefits of technology. So like case in point, when was the last time people as a rule tend to handwrite things? We might do it as like a shopping list kind of thing, but this is a skill that is still massively focused on in schools. And this is possibly going to be a controversial opinion, is mostly outdated. I personally do not necessarily think that the weight of time that is spent on learning handwriting is conversant to how much it would be used in modern day. So again, I don't think the use of phones in classrooms should be so stigmatized. What have I got here? Yeah, so like I know that Abigail touched on this before. So Ofcom reports that almost all children 5 to 15 have some form of mobile device. So yes, there are certain amounts of parity and socioeconomic factors that we're just going to put aside for a second, because that's a much bigger and longer conversation. But restricting technology in classrooms, that's more about the pedagogy needing to catch up, I think. So yeah, I'm probably up at my 2 minutes now. But yeah, another couple of things. 10% of 6-year-olds have their own phone. So we are basically looking at a resource that is invaluable for neurodivergent learners that's just not being embraced hard enough, in my humble opinion.
Okay.
I think you're right. We need to normalise the use and use it appropriately. Arran, I know you said you wanted to add a little bit to this.
So I want to give two snippets of information. I listened to a podcast ages ago, and it was a lady that was who was a head teacher of an all-girls school, independent all-girls school, and she allowed mobile phone use in every classroom. The mobile phone and distraction and bullying around online bullying dropped dramatically, because it wasn't recommended to be used out of classroom unless it was for work. So it was the opposite way around. So that's one positive thing. And I'm going to give you a little story. So for those who don't know, I'm severely dyslexic myself, and I use assistive tech every day, and I use a lot of the tech we're talking about today. I was doing a talk for Microsoft, and I went to the best way to describe it was a colonial club, where I was talking to a group of independent schools. And I came in. They didn't like it that I was in a t-shirt and jeans. You were meant to wear a suit. I work in a tech industry. You don't wear a suit in the tech industry. But the actual thing is that they asked me to sign this document and read their health and safety document. And I said, can you just read it to me, please? And this person was really angry, was really kind of grumpy about it. And I said, can you just please read it to me? I can't read it very well. And she said no. So I got my phone out, and Microsoft has an app on an iPhone called Seeing AI that reads text automatically. You don't have to scan it. There's other apps like Claro have some as well, and you can use a CPAN, of course. But and then she went to me, can you put your phone away? You're not allowed your phone out in this place. And after she said this to me 3 times, I went, right, I'm going to walk out the door and get my white stick, because then can I use it? And then she shut up, and then she wasn't there again. Because I have a hidden disability doesn't mean I should have access. So for me, every time I go into a school and they ban a mobile phone, I go, well, if that was my daughter, I'll see you in court, because it's against the Equality Act. Simple as, because that has more accessibility in that device, right, than I have. It's and now someone's ringing me, of course, because I've picked it up. But that's good. So,
Pretty typical.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, yep. There are lots of ways to use smartphones, all with assistive technology in them. But do you agree or disagree? Wait.
Do you agree or disagree with the removal of
Oh,
phones
let us know in
school?
chat. There
Let
we
us know
go.
in the chat.
I'm looking at
He
everything.
wrote the script.
I know I wrote the script and I still can't read it. It just proves that I'm completely dyslexic. We know using assistive technology can prove to use in the whole school sense, but
how will assistive technology enable active individualized learning in the curriculum? So, yes, we can use it, but how are we going to make it active individualized learning? I'm surprised Katie didn't volunteer for this one, but Paddy volunteered for it. So off you go, Paddy.
Did I volunteer? That's not like me to volunteer. It has to be said. I think my name just magically appeared on a spreadsheet somewhere. But genuinely though, this is absolutely right up my street, because and I'm going to pick up on something that Jim said earlier, and Jim and I would very much, as the phrase goes, sing off the same hymn sheet on this, in terms of when we're talking to people, that need for a toolkit, is a primary thing that we should be looking at in assistive technology. That need of providing the flexibility, because we know, even though we at TextHelp are, we're a software house. That's what we do. We produce software. So when you're learning online, that's what you're going to use. But we've got to recognize that there's plenty of paper in a classroom. We've also got to recognize that there are situations where inbuilt tools in devices or in operating systems or on platforms such as Office 365 are essential. So I think for me, we have to look at a situation where we're equipping SENCOs and we're equipping classroom teachers with the knowledge of the fact that those tools are available to them. And I think that's first. And the second thing comes back to another previous point, which is we got to make the children aware that this is there as well, and that they actually genuinely have the choice. If we do those two things, we're making really strong moves, I feel, to ensuring that students are empowered and pupils are empowered to make their own decisions on what's right for them and when, in the context of their learning, in the material that they happen to have. And I think that's really how we get them to engage more. And I know later we're going to come on to universal design for learning, which I could talk about for 3 hours, because I really believe in the framework and the flexibility it offers. But the last thing really in there is, and this for me is a challenge, that with the exception probably of scanning pens and Jim's tools, when you talk about tools that maybe Katie has or we have, or Arran might talk about inbuilt tools, we do have a potential gap, and that is with the accessibility of the content in the first place. It's a little bit less of an issue on a web page, but if we're handing out a PDF file, or if we're handing out certain documents or handouts, if as a teacher or a school we're buying third-party resources in from the big companies that sell resources, we've got to make sure those are accessible. Because if we don't make sure those are accessible from the get-go, it doesn't really matter if I fire them into Immersive Reader or I fire them into Read and Write or Crick or anything like that. It's not going to help them to the degree that it potentially could. And companies like, Kitty's and ours have come around with some workarounds, but that should not be the case. This has to be transparent. So we need accessible tools with our pupils. We need accessible content, and we need to make them aware how to use it. And then we empower them to just individualize things as they go along. And empowerment is central to everything here, but we've got to do our bit in those first two areas to make it so.
Thanks, Paddy. Jim, what would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Paddy. Really just to build off kind of what Paddy explained is, and the first, I really like this question because it is our motto, which is, creating an independent learning environment. These pens give students that independence that they crave to kind of showcase what they can actually do. And that toolkit approach, as I mentioned before, is giving them that access to every single piece of technology that they can have. And I've been into schools and I've seen how many students are using the pens with their headphones plugged in. It's creating that individual learning experience for them as they're sat there scanning that text and then hearing it aloud and speaking it back to the teachers as well. And that's the real key thing here, is that I also want to say to people that you've probably all seen our pens being used for exams. well, start to think about the other lessons that they can access using our pens as well. They can not only use it in English, they can use it in maths, they can use it in geography, they can use it in history, where there's more difficult words, where they can access that, they can use the dictionary mode and hear it aloud. So all of this really creates that individual kind of learning and gives them as much as possible. And they're not self-reliant, but they're actually doing it for themselves. And I've been there and seen some of the students' faces where they can actually do things for themselves. And it also scaffolds and supports that access and individuals' learning as well. And
Abigail, can I maybe just add something there? Just sorry, Jim, were you finished there?
No, I'm finished.
No. And one of the things, and I talk about it as the Spotify effect, right? Which oh, Jim's got really angry at me there and dropped
Jim's
off.
cut out now.
Sorry,
he comes
Jim.
again. he managed to get all the way through a segment.
I don't know what's going on.
Were you really angry at me there, Jim?
I was mad.
But I was just saying, Jim, the Spotify effect, right? And people go, what are you talking about? My thing was, I grew up as a mad music fan, right? Like there wasn't a minute of a weekend that you wouldn't find me in a record store. For those of you who remember records and latterly CDs, and then we all went digital, and Spotify came, and I went, this is the best thing ever. And what did I do but sold off all the, most of the music collection apart from the vinyl. But the problem with Spotify, right, is this: it gives me access to every song in the entire world. And then I go to listen to Spotify, and what do? I don't discover new things a lot of the time. I use the same things over and over and over again. And I think that is a danger on that software toolkit that Jim and I have both talked about. We have to make sure that we're very specific in the tools that we're there. We're not talking about this shotgun approach of just give them everything. It is a matter of making sure that we provide some consistency there across the board. So we know we're on paper, we're going directly to a pen. We're on a web page, we're going to read and write, or we're going to inbuilt tool. But it is about a steer. So we do have to limit that. And I can see Gavin and Abigail going, I wish Paddy would stop talking around about
I'm going. Yep. It's 9:30.
It's fine.
It's 9:30. We've done 2 questions. We've still got another 6 to go.
Luke. Yeah, Gavin, to be fair, I warned you in the green room.
Come on, Luke, add something to the end of that for us.
I mean, what more is there to say at this point? Like, I feel like we've kind of hit the foundation on that one. Just like building on what was said about the kind of parasocial element in regards to, like, I think it was Paddy said, the shotgun approach, which I think is actually a fairly common problem. We need to be careful when we're implementing technology, and I'm sure this is something that's agreed with relatively across the board in returns to the social contingent element of it. Like children who are choosing their own path on the learning journey, great, we should absolutely be empowering them to do that. But there is always going to be, until we have, I don't know, theoretical robot overlords or something, the need for a contextual human to be involved in the process to identify those learning weaknesses in the person and then correctly deploy the right tool from the aforementioned toolbox. And that can only come about with that's all I've got to say, really.
No worries, Luke.
I think I'm just going to add on the end. Jim said something when he did a presentation for us quite a long time ago now, and it was that your scanning pens are a reading aid, not a reading replacement. And I love that, because all of these tools they're fantastic, but when you don't have them available, what can we use instead? What other strategies? So can we switch from using the scanning pen to using a Microsoft solution, to using, my speech to text on the phone or whatever it is, not to become reliant on just one way of doing things. And the only way we can do that as educators is to expose our children, not in the shotgun approach, Paddy, of let's give them everything, but to expose them to a variety so that people find the one that they prefer, but also that they've got a backup one just in case one isn't working. But anyway, sorry, Bill.
So it's all right. You're just taking a bit more time. Don't worry. We've got pieces that we can cut out, so it's not too bad. Keeping things individualized has to be a key point in anything that we bring to our learners. Just because a program looks fancy doesn't always mean it will do this. But now we move on to the universal design for learning. So this is a teaching approach that works to accommodate the needs and abilities of all learners and eliminates unnecessary hurdles in the learning process. There are three main principles to the UDL. Representation, where the UDL recommends offering, she's pinging my phone now, offering information in more than one format. Action and expression, where the UDL suggests giving kids more than one way to interact with materials and what they've learned, which is what you've just said. Nice segue. And engagement, where the UDL encourages teachers to look at multiple ways to motivate students.
Motivate?
Yeah, motivate students.
Not multiply them.
No, don't multiply students.
Don't multiply students. So, Katie, we're going to drag you into this one. How do your resources fit that UDL vision?
So basically, UDL is fundamental to everything that we do. As we develop our software, whether it's Clicker or Docs Plus, we think carefully about learners of all abilities, and we strongly believe in the principles of personalised learning. So our software is used by pupils of all abilities, including struggling writers, learners with dyslexia, children learning English, and those with specific disabilities. We have significantly extensive support options for learners that we have built into the software. That might include switch access, eye gaze, enlarged keyboards. But what's also fundamental to Clicker and Docs Plus, alongside the personalisation options, is that it's designed to be one piece of software that supports learners of all ages, stages and abilities within the same classroom. And I think Jim mentioned earlier that, you know, it's about removing the stigma. So rather than specific children having to access Clicker or Docs Plus, or indeed any piece of software, the idea is that in most classrooms you can have multiple children using the same piece of software and accessing it at a level that's personalised and appropriate to them.
Thank you, Katie. So, Jim, would you like to come in on that?
Yeah, so firstly, I've been learning what it is. So I spent a bit of time doing some research first. So basically, I've learned what it is, so which is great. And firstly, I'd like to say for engagement, we need to provide autonomy and the choice for their learning as well that suits them. So they've got a choice on the type of technology. We've been talking about the toolkit approach, so let's give them the choice on what they want to actually use. Is it the pen? Is it software? So we've got that already. It's a supportive tool to access the learning that's relevant to them, so the text appropriate for them as well, and promoting participation in the activity, so they're actually feeling fully engaged and engaged with the activity. So it's again that all-inclusive approach, so everybody feels welcome. I looked at action and expression, our assistive tools, so the pens, for example. The reader pen, it doesn't just have the text reader solution, it also has the voice recorder and scan to file. So you can use the voice recorder to record voice clips and listen back to it. You can use the scan to file to save onto it, and then use that toolkit approach to upload it to the other software solutions that are available to you. And representation. It has a variety of different voices on our devices, so different accents, visual aids to help multisensory learning as well. So I've learned a little bit about UDL today. So
me too.
And try to add to it.
And then Paddy, you've got a whole website kind of full of stuff for UDL, if I remember rightly.
I am a UDL fanatic. I'm just glad Jim watched all my webinars before this. It was great. Like, I can't believe the amount of links I had to send him. But no, and you know what? The thing about UDL is, and I remember my first brush with UDL was genuinely when I first joined TextHelp a number of years ago, about 50 years ago it feels like now, but a number of years ago. And I thought, I kid you not, I thought, oh no, here we go. Here's another acronym that a sales team is using. Genuinely thought this. Here's another acronym a sales team is using just to sell their wares. And actually, it's an incredibly powerful framework. And it, you know, and Jim touched upon all kind of the key points of it there, so I won't go over it. But for me, it's about guidance in and around choice. Ultimately, you know, how do we provide choice, and how do tools like, for example, Read and Write or Claro or Equatio or Maths tool do that? And I always like to break UDL down into very, very simple examples, and I'll just give you one or two here. If I take, say, Read and Write, and for those of you who are watching and know it, it's a literacy toolbar. It sits at the top, whatever content you're in, it'll give you access to a range of tools. Whether you're doing exams, it'll give you a more limited range of tools. But if you think about UDL, and UDL fundamentally about choice, how is that embodied in, say, read and write? Well, if I have a Word document or I have a Google document in front of me as a pupil, what does the toolbar do? It gives me choice. It gives me choice to use text-to-speech to play it back. Brilliant. Okay, so now I've got it in another format. It gives me the choice to change the font style to maybe something that's more dyslexic friendly. So I've got a chance to change it. It gives me a chance, for example, to hover over a word and get a picture reference up of that word. So now I've got a visual prompt against the word as well. So I've started to have more choices with what was just a standard document PDF web page that have been sent down by my teacher. And I think those small things are really important. And in a web page, if you've got say something like the inbuilt tools from Microsoft, tools from ourselves and from Katie, if I'm on a web page, I can suddenly change the contrast, the color. I can change the font size, the scale. I can remove distractions. I can mask the screen. I can do so much. But the bottom line is I've started with something that's just standard. Everybody's just had the same piece of content. But the toolbar, in our case, Read and Write or Claro, has given me the ability to choose what is most important to me to change. And the same applies to how we're writing, right? And just briefly. And the simplest one here, and we've talked about it earlier, is I'm being tasked with the writing task. I've now got a UDL toolbar, a Claro or a Read and Write, and Read and Write in this case has dictation built in. So instead of me having to use the keyboard, I can just switch on the microphones and start reading loud. Okay. I can also have that text read back to me if I want, and it helps clarify what I've written down, if it makes sense and if it's spelled correctly. The bottom line for me, UDL is about choice. And if the tools, and all of the tools, Jim talked about it, Katie talked about it, give the pupil choice to take what is a standard resource and content and make it tailored to their own particular area of need, then that's the big thing. And that's UDL guides everything that we do. We apply the same to maths. You know, if you want to write your maths, if you want to speak your maths, if you want to type your maths, no matter what you want to do, it's there within, say, our Equatio toolbar. So yeah, I genuinely could do a few hours on this one. So I'm going to stop now because Gavin, you're nodding your head furiously, going, "Aha, Paddy, yes, but stop."
Yep, Paddy.
Yeah, I got you. Bye.
Okay, so most of us have technology around the school, interactive whiteboards, school networks, etc., etc. But how can we effectively integrate technology with our current drivers and systems? Arran, you volunteered for this. So did Paddy, by the way. so
just keep it short, though, please.
Keep it short. Well, I'm going to add 2 minutes on that last question, 2 seconds on that last question, because the thing about it, what it is actually UDL is what Microsoft is doing for everything. I'm using a Microsoft Surface Go laptop 1, right? There's now a 2. If everyone looks at their keyboard now, on the F and the J key, you have the
who muted
the 2 little lines. I know, 2 little lines to actually see the you can see the 2 lines that are for people that are blind. Now Microsoft has decided now to add 2 little dots on the F4 and the F8 key, so people know where the top of the keyboard is. So this is a new concept. So that actual concept of UDL is actually Microsoft's ethos around building everything in, and accessibility shouldn't be asked for, it should just be there. And that's the point of it. And that's the same thing. Now, going to the question that I've now forgot because because of my dyslexia, building technology into schools is actually really simple. It is. I go to hundreds of schools. It is. And you're so right that schools are very much like, okay, I have either a computer room over here, or I have this room that that's my learning support room that I'm going to use my CPEN in, or I'm going to use IDL in this room, or actually only this computer has read and write on, or Docs Plus on it. But actually, if we look at the concept of individual and the concept of one-to-one devices for every student that works, yes, there's a funding issue, that's another issue, but it works. And if you actually look at it, that there is schools that don't have the money, fund it, they can do it, and that's because they built it in. No one then is different. You don't get any difference, you don't get any stigma, you remove all that frustration, and basically the tools are there and access, and it means then we can deploy it. if anyone says to me that I've been into schools where say my IT person wants to spend £5,000 on a server or £20,000 on a server, I go, no. I know 4 schools that all they have is a firewall. They just use the cloud. Right? There's districts in the US that may not use Microsoft. They may use another product that I won't mention because but they don't use they just use the cloud. So it can be done all over the world. Yes, there is the issue of connectivity. Yes, we know that, but then they are overcoming things. And actually, if you do it, you have more of an inclusive environment. And that's the thing is that I'll name the school. So the Unicorn School in Oxfordshire, it's an independent school. I walked in there. They had no idea of technology. They still had charity licenses for Microsoft. I said you need to do this, and this, and within a month they did it. Teachers have got devices. Teachers are really happy. Students have got devices. They're using devices. They're inking on a device. They're using Claro for exams. They're using Microsoft for everyday learning. All right. They're using cloud technology to its full advantage, and they're getting the results. And that's the point of it. It's all about getting results. And I think what it is that it can be done. It's just a different mindset. It's this concept of that we've just we're coming out of a pandemic where we use devices. But Luke kind of touched on it earlier. We have a 21st education, a 21st century intake to a 19th century education system.
Yep.
That actually comes from Lorraine Peterson, OBE. That's her saying, not mine. Someone quoted it the other day, and I'm like, better tell them it's actually Lorraine's, not mine.
She might be in here somewhere.
No, she's not here today. Not today. Paddy. I think
I'm just going to have to say Google a lot of times to offset Arran's evangelism there. Google. There. I've just said it. I've just put it out there. But Arran does make a good point. And all the big houses have been very good at how they focus on cloud services. And I think that's a very important thing because it's less about installation. It's more about what's embedded in a device and on a particular platform. And I think these things are becoming more transparent. And that's a real wish for me going forward. And I think we'll maybe come to it later if we have time. But that assistive technology is kept transparent. To Jim's point earlier, and I always pick up on this, and Jim and I talk at length about this on things that we do. This kind of toolkit approach, I think, is so critical because there are times when digital learning isn't happening as well. But in the case that digital learning's happening, for me, the key thing is pick the tools that are going to work in as many places in a consistent way as possible. And that's not about UDL we talked about earlier, but for me, if I look at, say, something like read and write, I know I have confidence whenever any of my team talk to a school and they go, well, yeah, it'll work in your web browser. Yeah, it'll work in your PDF. Yeah, it'll work in your Windows device. Yeah, it'll work in your exams. And they can keep saying yes across the board. And you're in higher ed and people are going, well, I use Canvas or Blackboard. Oh, yeah, it'll work there too. That consistency is really important because you've mentioned like interactive whiteboards. A lot of that is browser based, or it's the inbuilt store on the interactive whiteboard. So if we can pull up, Immersive Reader, or we can pull up Equatio, or we can pull up any of those tools on there, there's consistency. But that I hate to get nerdy on things like this, but the cloud first strategy is actually really central from a digital standpoint, to how smooth things can be integrated into teaching and learning. It's essential. But one piece of advice, make sure whatever you're buying or whatever you're deploying works in as many places as possible, because consistency for AT is key. It really, really is.
Definitely.
And if you're rebuilding your school, make sure it doesn't have a tin roof, because unfortunately the internet connectivity for cloud-based things is not fantastic.
That's the question
unless
later on.
You've got Google, unless you got Google, because Google works everywhere. Isn't it right, Arran?
Oh dear.
So does Microsoft. If you plug
So
it
does
in,
Microsoft, but hey ho.
Yeah, there we go. Right. So it's good to hear that you don't have to spend a huge upgrade or spend the entire school budget on upgrading your assistive technology.
Right, so here is the crunch question, I think, actually, and we knew this would come up because we are constantly asked it. How can schools acquire funding, or what sources of funding are available for them to be able to buy into assistive technology? Because they will say, we haven't got the money. And Arran, it's down to you again.
And I know I said this. I said I'd answer this question. No one else has volunteered. So, let's break it down. So I'm a school governor, right? And the thing what it is if you've got a good governing body and you've got a good senior leadership, you can manage your budget properly. Simple as, right? That's the starting point. Secondly, if you're using Microsoft or Google, you've got technology already that is freely available for you. That both of them platforms are free. You don't pay for them. You get a thing called email, which everyone needs. You get cloud storage. And then with Microsoft, you get so much assistive technology that is a starting point. The toolkit approach is what I love, because I will say again, I'm severely dyslexic. I sit in Outlook and Teams and Word every day. So I use Microsoft product. But then on a Tuesday evening when I run a webinar, I have to use Claro to read the questions out, because that's the only way to do it. The same concepts there. There's concepts there, so it doesn't matter. And if I'm on my phone, I use my iPhone to do it. Funding is not a hard thing. It's just thinking about it. It's just thinking differently, and that's the thing. It's thinking differently and having that strategy right. Of course, you can use things like you can allocate a percentage of your pupil premium for certain things. You can allocate EHCP funding for it. You can look at that. You can look at different budget points. I think that the best thing for me is, why do a lot of secondary schools either buy technology like the scanning pen or Claro or TextHelp, sorry, or Read and Write, get it right, the right brand, the right product. It's because of the exam budget. It comes out of that budget pot. It's not coming out of the budget pot for English, or it's coming out of humanities. It's coming out of exams. It is just proper management, proper understanding. So and the thing what is technology today is just getting cheaper. It's like you can buy a Chromebook for 200 quid. You can buy a Microsoft device now for 229 quid. It's not out of the grand scheme of things. It isn't. So for me, it actually doesn't come down to actually finding funding. It's actually proper planning and actually having a strategy. And actually, the biggest thing, the only way this works is if you have a senior leadership team that actually believes in it.
Paddy's put his hand up.
I'm going to ignore him for a second and just add something from my own perspective.
Go for it.
It's that key thing about planning and the exams budget, certainly if you're a secondary. What schools don't realise or can't seem to get into their heads sometimes is actually by putting an adult at the side of a child in an exam, they're paying for that adult to sit there and do that. And by the time you've done 14 exams in the June, that's a hell of a lot of money. Whereas actually, if you invested that in a tool that you gave to the students when they're in year 7, you're giving the student their independence, they've got something they can use when they get to the exams, and you're reducing it. But it's that conversation with SLT, because they don't quite get that. What they've got to do is put that money in at the beginning to then see the return on investment a little bit later, and they can't see that. They just go, got to fix this, got to give the kid this now.
Yeah,
they actually need to think earlier.
A person, what a person's going to cost a lot more than a device, and you get better feedback, better support from that device.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before Paddy jumps in, 30 seconds. I was at BET 5 or 6 years ago when iPads first came out, and we talked about this girl that had Down syndrome. She had a TA with her all day. She had no friends. She had no interaction with people. They halved the TA budget by 50%, gave her an iPad. She had friends. She was going to parties. She was engaging because she had something that in common with other people. Technology, we talked about earlier, technology is there. Let's use it.
Okay, Paddy.
Gonna let Paddy loose, but Flo has put in the text, tech has saved them 300 hours of one-to-one in public exams. So, if that's what you do, use that quote, everybody.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, my hand up has just changed now, Abigail. We would formally like to offer you the job as sales and TextHelp. Like, yeah, I think we're all going to fight over you. All going to go, Abigail, yeah.
We're coming to that later on.
I think you're right. My original point was a simple one, and hopefully a slightly irrelevant one at the minute, and it's to Arran's point of that budget management, because like I saw a response come from a school this week, and the response was, I cannot afford exam software this year because of the high cost of electricity, right? And I know that school very well, and I know they're not going to Katie, they're not going to gym, you know, they're literally looking at no provision. And I'm going, look, we cannot afford to make those calls. And I know electricity is going on. We all know we're all paying it through the nose every month now, and it's going to get worse. But it is absolutely, to Aaron's point, it's about managing that and making sure that we're not taking those what are absolutely core essential tools and systems away from our pupils, and managing that well. Now, we can't let that situation crop up on us. So sorry, yeah, just wanted to chip in on that. But
it's okay.
But well done, congratulations. You start next month.
Okay, no worries.
You've managed to take away my segue as well. But it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. So, with the funding so tight at the moment and schools' energy costs going up by over 70%, thank you, a record inflation and everything else, whatever we can do to help schools is a great idea. It's one of the reasons we give 50% of our profits back to schools as sensible SENCO.
So, and Lynn down the side there has said she explains it to all of her SENCOs, and she suggests they get the tech written into their one plans and their EHCPs. Absolutely do it. So teachers and TAs, TA time is at an all-time premium. Number of EHCPs is up by 10% on a year-on-year basis for the last 10 years. And we often don't have time to be trained in the software that we are purchasing, either as staff or training our students. Sometimes we even purchase assistive technology and sorry, it sits in the box, not literally, but just nodding heads again,
it sits in the
doesn't
box.
get used. So how should we structure staff and student training in the use of technology and software to ensure they are using it effectively and we get the most cost and time efficient rollout? Katie, go for it.
So first of all, I would say that a combination of initial and ongoing training is the best to ensure that software is used successfully. We can't expect teachers or learners to use software if we don't invest in training. It's no good giving anybody a product or a piece of assistive technology and saying, get on with it, and then expecting 3 or 4 weeks' time that they're going to be, you know, flying with what they're producing. I think we all need to recognise that cost and time are key factors. And I think a big element of that is providing choice to schools. So whether that is when they can access training, whether it's free or paid for, and also the format that it comes in. So, you know, are schools after one-to-one specific training where we can create something bespoke? Do they want something that's sort of a 3-minute drop-in tutorial that just gives them an introduction? I think the idea is also that we offer them continuous CPD support throughout the time that they're using our products. So, you know, that might be monthly webinars focusing on a specific area of assistive technology or with a particular curriculum focus. I think it's also important as well that training is targeted at specific sort of areas within a school. So it might be that we offer training for literacy leaders or SENCOs and people that are driving assistive technology. So I think it needs to be targeted, ongoing, and I think there needs to be a range of options, recognising that time and cost are key factors.
Thank you, Katie. Luke, you're going to add to that one for us.
Katie made a lot of excellent points there. Springboarding off what you said at the beginning, Abigail, regarding technology remaining in the box, I think we could all agree with that was a big mood moment. The number of people that just aren't aware of the features or even the very basic fundamentals of, lost someone, of the programs that are not just the ones that we offer, but on a wider basis of things that are even intrinsically available on, Aaron's going to appreciate this one, most Microsoft packages. They just don't know they're there. So that feeds into Katie's point about the training. There is also a certain onus on us as developers and engineers in that regard to make it as easy and stressless as possible. So when we introduce them to something, they don't sound like they've just been plopped in the cockpit of a space shuttle. Like, the UI needs to be clean and intuitive. They need to be able to extract data at a glance from whatever program it might be. The easier that we can make it for them, the easier it is for them to understand and use, and the more likely it is that they'll crack it out of the box in the first place.
Thank you, Luke. I bet Jim's got some tales about scanning pens gathering dust in the cupboard.
Oh, as soon as you said it, I was nodding my head ferociously because the amount of conversations I have with people who've purchased 30 pens, for example, and half of them are still in the box, which is just absolutely madness in my eyes. I spend a lot of my time doing training. That's probably 70% of my role, is encouraging people to use the pens in the most effective way. And to bring on my point as well, is we're hardware, so we are slightly different. We're something that you can physically touch and use. So that training's a really key part of my role in encouraging people to use it. And a point that I want to touch on is around the stigma again, is giving people that kind of encouraging people that they don't look different with using our device. It's that independence, it's that confidence. They can use it discreetly as well. Having that champion possibly for that kind of product. And this relates to everybody in here today, that maybe you have a teacher or a TA, you can empower them by saying you're empowering others. Or I've had conversations with students that have used our pens and they've said, I'm happy to speak in front of people, and that empowers others as well. And that's what encourages everybody to use it. And I feel, you know, getting that training, having the video content, having those resources that aid the training and give learning activity and scaffold that learning is really important. But the final key point for me is taking away that stigma and having that champion person who can really encourage others to use our devices and other technology as well is really key. So yeah, I can bang on about training for a long time because that is a large part of my role. It really is. So I can get really excited about it.
Everybody's now put their hand up. They've been inspired by you.
They have. Paddy, you were first with your hand up. I was watching.
Yeah, really quickly. Things we learned over the last couple of years: self-paced training, short, focused self-paced training, really useful, and also actually certification. So we'll do for like reading right, you can get your level 1, your level 2, and we just, it's a way to work towards something and get certified and improve as you go. Secondly, really quickly, never ever forget about the pupils, and that we need to relate to them in their voice and in their way. You know, we've had to remake resources to make sure they're in an 11-year-old's voice or a 14-year-old's voice, because it has to be relevant to them. They need to know why they're going to bother. You know, that's really important. And thirdly, and this hasn't been mentioned for me, parents. I mean, we need to make parents aware. What is your child using? How are they using it? Why are they using it? They can use this at home. You can use this at home. But I think it's a very important part of the mix. It sometimes gets kind of left, you know, behind when we're focusing on that trifecta, that 3 point of the triangle is so essential, because that's what makes the magic. You know, those 3 stakeholders working together is just essential. We all know that from our education experience. So, yep, I'll stop now. Over to Arran.
Arran.
So for me, training is so important, because that is what I do 99% of my time, is talking to schools about what Microsoft can offer for free. And as I say, it's always a starting point. There's always need for other products and that toolkit approach. But even Microsoft doesn't get it always right. Like being a $1 trillion company, actually my role is tiny compared to what we can offer. And we do have all of that online training for free. We have that staged approach: become your MIE expert, to become an expert within it, become part of that exclusive club. But we still can't get to everyone. So I think actually that we understand the condition, because we understand the pressure that everyone's under. But it is that point actually that we are everyone's trying. And I think that the benefit that lots of us all do is that we all offer free training. We do, and schools should take us up on it. It does not take that long either to run a webinar, run a Teams call, run a Zoom call, run a Google Meet. It's not hard for a school to do it. It isn't. We did it all through lockdown. Let's carry on doing it. Yeah, it's good to go into a school and have that conversation, right? But like this call's being recorded. It's good CPD for everyone, right? Even if only 5 or 6 of your staff can get in, record it, put it on your school SharePoint, because they got a bit of Microsoft joke in there. But the point is that it's there for
Google Drive, just saying.
Google Drive. Yeah, Google Drive.
It's the YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Yeah, YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. Okay, there you go. That's still owned by Google.
Thanks, Arran.
Luke,
just finish it off for us.
Sure, just a speed round. One, absolutely training should be an ongoing thing. It should never be one and done, and applying that to the pupils, especially with the times we've just had and the massive explosion in home education, absolutely critical. Couldn't agree more. The idea of gradated qualifications, again, quite interesting. A lot of my research recently has been on contingent learning, and the idea that people talking on a screen is all well and good, and having a human element is great. But we've got work right here, or there are plenty of other similar models of short bit of information, then questions, then short bit of information, then questions, actually being proven as a more efficient way of imparting training, rather than just, here is a 5-minute video on how IDL best works. Off you go.
Yeah.
In fact, teach our teachers the same way as we purport to teach our students, transfer those skills. So your retrieval practice, small steps, scaffolding it for them, giving them the practice, giving them the attempts. I keep having a rant about CPD training. Bit of a continuation into things here. So we have got, how can we use assistive technology to support safeguarding? And I'm actually going to tag this onto, is there anything that works without a Wi-Fi connection? Because safeguarding and Wi-Fi connections tend to get lumped together when we're talking about technology in schools. So I'm going to lump together all the people that said they were going to talk about this as well. Luke, you're off first on safeguarding and things that work without a Wi-Fi connection.
Cool. Okay, in at the deep end. In regards to assistive technology and safeguarding, I'm not too certain about what does and does not work on the Wi-Fi. So I'll state my ignorance up front there. But for instance, a lot of the big problems when it comes to assistive technology and safeguarding is the internet never forgets. So if we just sidestep the idea of issues of data privacy for a minute, because again, massive topic, we don't have the time to cover that right now. Anything that makes the information on the internet easier to access for concerned parties and ensures data integrity is all for the better. So like I've got a bit here on how we can implement, again, it comes back to that paradigm. I forget the excellent quote that Arran, who has now disappeared, had, but the 19th century pedagogy for a 21st century school. Safeguarding is another element where that really comes into play, in that recordings of interviews, for instance, are going to be far more reliable than handwritten ones. When I did my PGCE 7 years ago, there was a lot of instance on, if you have a disclosure, these are the things not to do. It is very difficult to have a handheld process that would be fair across the board and to a certain legal standard, which is something that assistive technology could provide. The additional part of that is, aside from the data protection part, a educator, a responsible adult sat there with prompt on screen working through it with the child. There is also that screen that acts as an anonymizer, that's a fun word to say, which a child may be more au fait with actually opening up to if it's not a personal revelation to them. It's not less of a personal disclosure for what could be some pretty awful things. Yeah, that's my 2 minutes.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron's actually disappeared, so Jim, I'm going to pass over to you for this.
Yeah, obviously know how safeguarding, how important it is having a wife who works at a primary school, being a year 5 teacher, some of the stories that I've heard from her. So I know how really important it is to keep, and basically the pens don't have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth capabilities. They're a completely standalone portable device that won't save anything, so that really helps to protect and support safeguarding in that aspect, really, because it literally doesn't do anything other than scan the text and read to you and have those features. So none of that, like the saving onto there, you can even go into the saving facility and delete stuff off it, so you have that control of the device as well. There's also a setting on the reader pen that you can change it into the exam reader, so you can actually lock it down, and it doesn't allow you to use the dictionary or storage facilities in the classroom if you want to as well, and you have that control, which gives you that safety net as well. So that's really all I wanted to add, because our pens don't have that connectivity.
Excellent. And actually you can lead me into something that I haven't prepared any of you for, but I'm going to ask, it's a two-part question.
Oh,
Is your product, no, it's fine. I'll
Okay.
take one of the others out.
Okay.
Is your product usable in Key Stage 2 SATs papers, and is it usable in GCSE exams? So it's probably a very quick answer from each one of you. Luke, it's not relevant to you, so I'm kind of going to ignore you. Sorry. Katie, can we use your product in Key Stage 2 SATs and in GCSE exams?
Okay, so the quick answer to that would be Docs Plus, our secondary project, could be used within GCSE as reader and scribe, reader or scribe, word processor, any of those access arrangement combinations. You can use Clicker with Key Stage 2 SATs. Primary schools commonly don't, so it would be more common for secondary pupils to use Docs Plus for GCSE access arrangement. So that's me done.
Thank you, Katie. Paddy, can we use yours?
Yes. Yes is the answer to both. For upper level, we have a lockdown exam mode, so that's ready for high stakes tests and end of year exams. And then for SATs, we have more flexibility in and around switching on and off what can or can't be used that's relevant to the particular test that's in place. So yeah, that's true in both cases.
Thank you very much. And Jim, can we use yours?
Yeah. So that's our bread and butter. Primary school, yes, you can use our devices. However, you can't use it in the reading section of the English exam. You can use it for maths and SPAG. So yes, you can use it there. And for GCSEs, it's open to every single examination, as long as it's this keyword, normal way of working. So as long as you've been using it before, you can go in. Yeah, I wanted to get that in before I finish today. Normal way of working, you can go in and use our device across all examinations at GCSE level and at A level. So English reading as well, so the reading section of the English exam. So yes, you can use the exam reader.
Welcome back, Arran.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. And Flo corrected me and said and A level as well, but I think people can probably extrapolate from GCSE into A level against the JCQ rulings that go with that. Okay, so we're going to hop to our final question, which is, it says at the bottom down there, what will assistive technology look like in the future? Luke. We'll come back to it in a few years' time and check you're right.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm well known for my precognitive talent. To me, like the sky's the limit. Once we actually overcome the prohibitive costs of virtual reality, I genuinely think that that's going to be the next big frontier for assistive technologies for very specific SENDs. Haptic technologies, the idea of being able to more physically interface with problems will be a massive help to those with some forms of processing difficulty. Like when I was talking about yesterday with working memory and the like, having those sorts of more tactile, kinesthetic technologies at hand are the next big stage.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Luke. Sorry, I turned my page and I've forgotten who I'm asking next. Good start. Paddy, come on, crystal ball.
20 years ago, I was on a futurist panel and I was asked, Paddy, do you ever see a camera and a music device being added to a mobile phone so we have one device? And my answer was categorically not. Who in their right mind would want to put their music device on their phone, right? And somebody has that recorded. So I lost all credibility for futurism back then. My consultancy rates went down very fast, but fundamentally believed that. I like to think I'm a little bit older and wiser now. So on this one, I think, you know, what am I striving for? What a TextHelp strive for in this? And I'm not going to get into some of the areas that perhaps Luke has mentioned there because I do agree with him on those. For me, it's about transparency, right? That assistive technology is transparent. It's just there going forward. And it is the norm that everywhere we turn, every platform we're in, every device we're on, every piece of paper that we pick up has the ability to have assistive technology. And that's I don't think that's a pipe dream anymore. I think we're getting a lot closer to that. And I think that's what it looks like. You know, I have a piece of assistive technology on me right now, and nobody says it's assistive technology, and it's these. these things here, right? They're assistive technology. They help correct my vision, but they're just the norm. Everybody wears glasses. Everybody has contact lenses in a different way. You know, they're there and it's transparent, and that's what I hope assistive technology looks like. So I don't think we need to get super fancy. We just need to make it the norm.
So Jim and Gavin are feeling left out for not wearing glasses. Arran, Arran, what's the future going to look like for assistive technology?
I could just gonna say it's got to be built in. It's got to be there. We're going to see a lot more AI driven technology. AI is going to play a big part of it. It is. Sorry. The problem is that the reason I went off is that, as people might not know, I'm in the middle of a campsite with 600 scouts arriving in a minute, and there's now water in the distribution board. So I could cut off anyway because I'm using some battery to power the 4G box. So I can get back on the call. This is what you call proper technology. That is the power of technology, though, isn't it? It's actually I can be sitting in the middle of a field with technology to actually access this call, and that's the thing. We are already moving forward. We are moving forward. We're going forward. I think that's the positive thing. So let's just keep going forward. But I think it has to be built in, and it has to be part of everyday life. The norm is the right word.
Thank you very much, Arran.
Was it?
Right, you're there, dear.
Am I there?
You're there.
Oh, I might. Oh, sorry, there was no one else to speak. I thought there was more people to speak, but hey. So it looks like the development of assistive technology will continue to be pushed further into the future, and the development of virtual immersive worlds might bring a whole new world to pupils and how they're educated. Yep, that was going back to Luke's thing. Luke, I agree with you.
VR and AI.
And that's it. That comes to the end of our whole thing.
It did.
I think it does.
Asked any questions
And
as we went along.
Does anybody have any questions for the next 0 minutes, 5 seconds in the chat? But let's give a big round of applause to our panel. And if you've enjoyed this and you want more, let us know. We're always looking for more ways to inform and engage as many SENCOs and teachers we possibly can do.
Okay, and remember, if you want any more information from our panel, Gavin is going to drop the link to the form in the chat now. We'll also email it out to anybody who registered on the Eventbrite site. So if you want any information from IDLS, from Scanning Pens, about Microsoft, I think Paddy will answer Google as well as talking about TextHelp, or from Katie about Docs Plus and Clicker, please do drop your information. I've got too many words to remember. Please do drop your information into that form, and we will share your email address with these guys for them to pick that conversation up with you. Thank you to everybody who has joined us this morning, and especially big thank you to our panel members who I think have done an amazing job at describing different things, and it's such a different way of doing things. And you know what, there was no virtual fisticuffs because you supported each other. I heard Paddy recommend Scanning Pens at one point, and I heard Scanning Pens was talking about something else. So thank you for supporting each other's products, because that's the recognition that not one thing fits everybody.
It is.
We have to find the right thing for our students.
So true.
And the right link that I've got for this form.
The right link.
Which is there.
There we go. There's your link for your form. Eve, you're very welcome. Okay. So we will let individuals tootle off to go and find what it is they need to do. We will sort the recording out, and we will host that on the YouTube channel.
On the YouTube channel, hopefully Saturday morning.
Hopefully Saturday morning when you've edited it. And we will also send it out on the email link with the form as well, just in case anybody's missed it. So thank you to everybody. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.